So, which are you lying about? Being an emissary or a Jedi?
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Harriet, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the finale of Skeleton Crew. Guys, I'm actually happy to report that this show is not a piece of the big puzzle. It's not here to explain how Palpatine returned. It's just a damn good Star Wars show made by creators who are operating at the top of their craft. It is still loaded with highly satisfying Easter eggs for Star Wars fans, and a little later I'll tell you why I do think this finale could be used to explain the rise of the First Order. Now guys, I am exhausted because, as you know, some of our enemies have been sending the store to cities across America for our ScreenCrush tour. We just did a show in Phoenix last night and it was so much fun, but I'm going to tell you guys about it a little later in the video. So the episode picks up where the cliffhanger left off, with Jod Nana-Wood posing as a Republic emissary and brandishing his lightsaber. Now, even though that cliffhanger was menacing, we see the real reason he ignited the saber was to prove to the people that he is an emissary of the Republic. And this line
makes it very easy for me to know who to carve up.
Was just to keep the kids in line so they wouldn't talk. For some reason, I read that as more of a violent threat, that he was threatening to murder the kids in front of their parents. Instead, Jod uses the parents' complacency against them, and this touches back to the theme of this show. At-Aten is essentially a communist utopia. Everybody is kept from leaving the planet or even seeing the stars. The adults invest all of their energy into the betterment of this one single society. They believe in the supervisor and they believe in the system. The problem is, as we'll see, the system is automated. It does not account for human emotions like greed, desire, or even boredom. The adults in the show parallel us in our own lives. As adults, we trust in certain systems. We work hard and pay our bills, and we also entrust a great deal of our lives to machines. You're watching me right now on a machine, probably because the algorithm helped you to find us. And what a great algorithm it is.
All hail the algorithm.
But this episode, and especially this show, is about how adults allow ourselves to be blinded by this system. We assume that everything is all right because they have it under control, whereas a child is going to be more likely to question current systems and to grow society. And this central theme about youth questioning authority is in the DNA of Star Wars. It's been part of this franchise since the very first shot of the authoritative dreadnought chasing a teenager through space. I think this is why this episode and this show feels so much like Star Wars to me, even though there's not an original trilogy character in sight. So Fern's mother Farah takes Jod and Fern to meet the supervisor, and like we guessed, it is a machine. But I was guessing that the supervisor was secretly a machine, like Landru in an old Star Trek Those Old Scientists episode.
Landru is dead. You are a machine.
However, it seems to be public knowledge among the adults that the supervisor is indeed a droid. They go up the supervisor's tower, which many of you on our Discord have been pointing out is designed to look like this tower in East Berlin, which, like At-Aten, were under communist rule, and was designed with this brutalist architectural design. Shout out to Petorian on Twitter for pointing out that this was a subtle hint that At-Aten was also trapped behind the wall of the barrier, just like East Berlin was. I'm really gonna miss this show because they did a great job of putting the characters first. Like, each one of these kids had an actual emotional arc and they felt like a real person. Like KB, for example, dealt with real trauma and a disability and a feeling that she would never be good enough for her friend. And I personally can relate to that. Like, especially in this job, I'm always feeling like I'm getting left behind. Like, I look at what other channels are covering and I wish we could make videos about every single thing that I love. And this year especially, with so much being released, it's really caused my anxiety to spike. So when this used to happen, I would have panic attacks, but that was before I started online therapy with BetterHelp, the sponsor of this video. My therapist helped me to immediately get to the core of why I felt like I was falling behind in life. She helped me to re-examine these external pressures and see that they didn't really matter. In my very first session, she helped me to understand things about myself that I thought were always going to be just broken. Like, over the course of the next few weeks, she helped me in so many ways with worksheets and time management, and she also finally helped me to get over how much my life had changed during the pandemic. So guys, if you are feeling anxious or stressed or depressed, or even if you've just always wanted to try therapy, I can personally recommend BetterHelp. Maybe you're feeling down after the holidays, or you just want to start the new year with a better understanding of yourself. So to get started, you fill out a questionnaire and then they'll match you with a therapist in as little as a couple days. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy more comfortable and convenient. You can connect with a therapist from a network of more than 30,000 licensed professionals with a wide range of specialties and backgrounds. They make sure therapists therapists on the platform are well qualified and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. And if you need to switch therapists for any reason, it is very easy and has no additional cost. BetterHelp has more than 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, so this is a platform that you can trust. So guys, I can personally recommend BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/ScreenCrush and get 10% off your first month of therapy. Now back to Skeleton Crew. The chamber outside the supervisor's room is covered in layers of dust, and I definitely got the feeling of the secret Hydra base in Captain America the Winter Soldier, which also housed an omniscient AI. And the supervisor is voiced by Stephen Fry, and we see that it's not just a machine, it's a giant droid. Now the design here calls back to a few elements. First, I think they could have been inspired by the Supreme Intelligence in Marvel Comics, the giant brain that rules Kree society. Especially these cables descending from the ceiling seem to echo that design. Also, of course, the singular red eye has become shorthand for Control Freak AI, because this was the appearance of HAL 9000 in Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Now we of course have seen this parodied or copied in films like WALL-E. He says,
I have been watching over you and your daughter with great interest.
which has to be a callback from this line from newly elected Chancellor Palpatine in The Phantom Menace.
And you, young Skywalker, we will watch your career with great interest.
It's a subtle way to show that both Palpatine and the supervisor are dictators ruling over their societies. However, I do wonder if Palpatine even knew about AT-ATN, which we'll talk about a little later in the video. The supervisor also has this insectoid look, like the Imperial probe droids or like the machines in the Matrix, who were also machines controlling a human society. Subtly, all throughout the season, they have been seeding this idea of the kids being the key to overriding the rules of a droid-run society. The droids enforce the laws in AT-ATN, but Fern is able to deceive her house droid pretty easily.
Run memory override. Yes, I was. You just didn't see me.
Like the supervisor, 33 has a system of codes and laws that he enforces, but the kids are able to circumvent those laws by claiming they have authority over him. And this is the exact same trick that Jod tries to use against the supervisor, until...
You see, the last message from the Republic stated that all Jedi were traitors.
Now, this was a very, very interesting moment. All season long, they said that AT-ATN was a planet from the Old Republic, which technically was 1,000 years before the rise of Palpatine. And I have to assume that Palpatine didn't know about AT-ATN, or else he would have taken their credits to help build the Death Star, which, as we see in Andor and Rogue One, was of course running over budget.
Well, you know, maybe not, because if he suddenly introduced an influx of credits into the banking system, the money would be devalued.
You raise a good point, explaining how inflation works. High five. But the point is, in Revenge of the Sith, the Republic would have broadcast that the Jedi were traitors. Palpatine framed them, remember.
And the Jedi Rebellion has been foiled.
So the supervisor received this message from the Republic. So the Republic that replaced the Old Republic 1,000 years prior would still be on the same communication system. But after this, the supervisor says they never received another message from the Republic because, technically, the Republic no longer existed.
The Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire!
So then Jod actually uses the Force, which surprised me. I thought he was going to end up being a fraud like Kumail Nanjiani's character in Obi-Wan. He does struggle though to deflect these stun bolts, which reminded me of this Ahsoka Tano training sequence in Tales of the Jedi. Jod responds by stabbing the supervisor in the eye. Just like in the video game Contra, the weak spot is the big glowing red eye that apparently houses all the processors for this entire unit. And then Jod commands the invasion to begin via hologram, just like Palpatine did in The Phantom Menace.
Begin landing your troops.
Begin the invasion!
Wim uses an old school walkie-talkie to talk to Neil, which yes, is just like the kids in Stranger Things, but that was inspired by kids in movies like The Explorers, a movie that is about kids building a spaceship and leaving their planet, just like in Skeleton Crew. When the pirate ship lands, a couple of you pointed out on Twitter how this looks like the ship in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, both because of its sheer mass and the way it looms over the town, but also the way it emerges through the clouds. Shoutouts to Dr. Obi-Wan Pharma-D and friend of the channel, ATG Podcast, for those observations.
Yeah, I also thought it looked like the ship from Arrival.
Ooh, good one. So down below we see the same Ithorian walking his frog dog from episode 1, and it still bothers me that in our breakdown of that episode I called it a loath cat.
What did he say?
Now meanwhile, Neil is just stuck in a bathtub, kind of like that little girl in the Florida Project. Now once the droids are shut down, Wim gets to tell his dad what's really going on.
John's a bad guy. He's lying. He didn't save us. He's trying to get us.
And I love how this brings the story full circle. In episode 1, Wim Wim was the dreamer and his dad was the one who seemed to have a firm grasp on reality. But here, Wim is the one who knows what's really going on, while his dad is clinging to a false perception of the world. That perception is that everything will always be just fine.
Don't worry, it's just a power outage. Looks like the whole block's out.
And so it's up to the kids to save the day. And I love that the power cuts out all of the adult vehicles, the cars, so the kids have to use their bikes to get around. This is very reminiscent of 80s classics like The Goonies and of course E.T. Now the shot where the kids jump the canyon are even framed to call to mind when E.T. helped the bikes fly in the final chase scene. Now John Watts and his team wanted to call back to this 80s aesthetic in the show. They even put tassels on the kids' handlebars. Now the guy that Wim's dad takes the bike from is named Bonja Falfa from episode 1, the guy who wanted to drag race Fern. And that character was named after Bob Falfa, Harrison Ford's drag racing character in George Lucas's American Graffiti. Also, an adult taking a kid's bike is like Bran taking that little girl's bike in The Goonies. So the kids take the same shortcut that KB and Fern used in episode 1. And then the kids ride their bikes through the testing center that we saw in episode 1. This is a subtle way of showing us that the kids are now taking their real placement test. They're contributing to the great work in their own new way. And the best part of this is how it finally gives Wim and his dad a chance to bond.
Son, you are talking to a level 7 systems coordinator.
Again, it's full circle. This is showing Wim that a boring job can be cool, but it's also finally letting him have a reason to look up to his father. We see this same role reversal in the tower, where now it's Fern's mother asking her daughter for guidance.
Okay, so what's the plan?
And she has to teach her mom how to misbehave. So Wim shows up and uses his greatest weapon, his imagination.
I thought the barrier jammed all communication.
Not if you have the crystal of the founders.
Now, of course, his limited worldview means that he makes a pretty big mistake right here.
It's giving you a chance to surrender now, because the whole entire Jedi army is on their way.
But Jod corrects him pretty quick.
The Jedi are all dead.
Meanwhile, KB flies the cinder through the barrier, very Batman 89, and calls Kim. Kim, of course, is the hybrid cat-owl puppet and the character that I think is most likely to return in every Star Wars project made from this day forth. I love also here how she measures distance.
They'll be there in 2 flaps.
Now, on the planet, we finally get to see some nuance from Jod. Now, it's clear that he does not want KB or anyone else to die.
She'll never make it.
And this leads them to a turning point. The only way to let the X-Wings into the planet is to take down the barrier. To save their world, it must change forever. Again, calling back to that Star Wars theme of the youth changing the world, which is rooted in George Lucas's counterculture sensibilities. And I love that it's 12-year-olds issuing this change, because George Lucas always said that Star Wars was made for 12-year-olds.
And I tell people, don't underestimate 12-year-olds. They're smarter than the rest of us.
Right.
And then we finally get Jod's backstory.
I was living in a hole in the ground, and a Jedi found me.
He was a street urchin who was found by a Jedi who was on the run after Order 66, and she saw that he had Force talent, and now we see where his moral code comes from. He really did care for this Jedi woman, and even now it seems like he doesn't want to disappoint her. But after the Empire killed her, his worldview became absolute.
That's the galaxy. It's dark, with a few pinpricks of light.
And he's not wrong, that's technically what space is, darkness punctuated by stars, which of course sets up the ending when the people of At-Aten can see stars for the first time. They lived their entire life in a bland, gray universe, and then they achieve a kind of enlightenment, being able to see the full scope of the galaxy, good and evil. Now I do wonder who Jod's Jedi Master was, if we ever saw her in the Clone Wars, and if you have any theories on who it could be, let me know down in the comments or on our free-to-join Discord server. Also guys, don't forget that we have merch, lots of fun Star Wars parody merch, and now we took some of our favorites like Original Trilogy and Somehow Palpatine Returned and put them on hoodies for cold weather. And we're always running new deals and collections, so sign up to join our newsletter for more information. The link is below. And then we get into a Force Pool standoff over a lightsaber, not unlike Kylo Ren and Rey fighting over Luke's saber in Last Jedi. And that's when Wim's dad summons his inner George McFly and punches Jod right in the kisser. Wim finally ignites the saber correctly, as his imagination and idealism do finally save the day. And then the New Republic shows up. Flying Lane Leech on Twitter pointed out that they sure did respond fast, even though they let Navarro be attacked by pirates in Mandalorian Season 3. But the difference here is Navarro was an Outer Rim world that was not a member of the Republic, and At-Aten, I guess, is technically still a member of the Republic, but more importantly is filled with lots and lots and lots of money.
Money, 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 money.
But not only do we see X-Wings, but also B-Wings join the attack. Now, we first saw these fighters in Return of the Jedi. Now, in old Legends continuity, they were designed by Admiral Akbar, but recently in the show Star Wars Rebels, we saw they were designed by an engineer named Corey, named after Star Wars art designer Ralph McQuarrie. And ATG Podcast on Twitter pointed out that this is the first time we ever see a B-Wing fire all 4 lasers at once in live action. But the first time we ever saw this happen was in the Rebels episode Wings of the Master. But this is also a very special X-Wing. You guys will recognize this one's your mom. In the cockpit, we see an Abonado, the same species as Cal Threnali in Force Awakens, although we don't know if it's the same guy because he is uncredited. They rush to see if KB is okay, and I love this very subtle Easter egg that I got from Clone Humor on Twitter. They note that this line,
"You don't want to have a little adventure just to get crushed at the end. Come on, let's go,"
is probably a reference to what happens to Kemek when he's crushed by credits during the Aldhani heist in Andor. Then Wim looks at the sky as a rebel blockade runner enters the atmosphere. Now, this is the first ship that ever appeared in Star Wars in the opening shot of A New Hope. This brings the series full circle because remember, the series opened with the pirates attacking a ship, and there were plenty of callbacks to the opening of A New Hope that we talked about in our episode 1 breakdown video. And as I talked about earlier, this shot, right, the opening shot of Star Wars symbolized the struggle of youth versus the establishment. So it's cool that Wim gets to see that ship appear once again here. So the end credits are Wim's storybook with images like the Hidden Temple, Jedi fighting Trandoshans, a Padawan fighting a Sith, but most importantly, we see that Wim and his friends are now part of this story on its final page. But it's interesting that there is a planet filled with money out there in the galaxy. Now, presumably, the New Republic takes control of this planet and adds the credits to its treasury. But this is a remote world, and the New Republic doesn't police the Outer Rim so well. We know that the Outer Rim was actually territory that was taken over first by the First Order. And in the great book Bloodline, we see how the First Order was funded through an underground network of underworld contacts that would have been active in the Outer Rim. And also, there were some people in the New Republic who didn't like that form of government who were secretly funding the First Order. So it could be possible that these vast financial reserves on Ad-Aton are funneled to fund the ships in the First Order that we see in The First Awakens. That would be a neat way to connect the triumph of this show to eventually what became the downfall of the New Republic. Well guys, that was another fun ScreenCrush video for another perfect day here in the ScreenCrush universe. Gosh, I love you guys, I love our fans, and I love my job.
Yeah, it sure is great being us.
I hate that ScreenCrush and Ryan Airy. You see, I, Paul from the Heavy Spoilers channel, I also hate small dogs because obviously I'm a bad person. Now I know something that's really gonna get them. I'm gonna send them to a far away, far distant city where they can never come back. I'm sending them to
Los Angeles, California.
Well, I don't know, boss. That seems kind of mean.
Shut up or I'll give you a fresh one. Now activate the Destructo Beam.
Wow, are we in Houston, Texas? Doug! I hope he's okay. Guys, you have to check out our live show. They are so much fun. We just did a West Coast swing. This weekend we're doing Texas, and then Philly, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Orlando. We're doing Pee-wee's Playhouse for Nerds with exclusive breakdowns, special guests, but best of all, it's just so much fun to meet you guys in person. You can get ticket links below. You don't want to miss it. We're almost done with the tour, and believe me, it's a lot of fun. You're really going to love it. So, what did you guys think of the finale of Skeleton Crew? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, or at me on Twitter, or in our free-to-join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.